Joining us right now is one of the very courageous women trying to fight that fight to ensure that we do have a solid electoral system. She is Sidney Powell, the lead attorney for the Trump campaign legal team. And Counselor, thank you for joining us today.
Oh, thank you, Larry.
There's a couple of things that you all presented yesterday at this extraordinary press conference that really it bears repeating and it bears a little bit of fleshing out. And I want to get to as much as I can. First of all, the question of overvotes and over ballots. This has been something that's been so maddening for so many people when they see precincts, mostly in cities like Milwaukee and Detroit, Philadelphia, Pittsburgh, and they see precincts where they had 200 to 300% turnout. Has your investigations at this point been able to come up with a clear answer as to what exactly happened there?
Well, it's probably attributable to fraudulent mail-in ballots or computer alterations of the vote. Either one is distinctly possible. And, of course, we have a lot of dead people voting, but that's not what my case is really based on. That's certainly one of the issues that indicates a scheme to defraud the people of their legal votes.
Yeah.
Because people had to go out and affirmatively fill in ballots for people that they knew were dead and then file them. And each of those is a federal crime punishable by 5 years in prison, if I recall correctly.
And that actually raises another question. There's so many questions that I have. Your effort right now is a civil effort on behalf of the presidential campaign of Donald Trump. What you are alleging, what your co-counselors are alleging and have presented, they're criminal actions. Is there any cooperation, or do you know, are there independent investigations going on with the FBI and the Justice Department?
I have no knowledge of independent investigations by the FBI and Justice Department. I can't imagine that people haven't been apprehended and arrested and indicted already for some of these clearly, easily provable, outrageous crimes that would set an example for others to know that they can't go around doing this. We've got evidence of paying for ballots to be harvested in at least one major city that is corrupted. Larry, the information is coming in at a faster rate than our little team of lawyers can even process it. Yeah. Americans are fed up with the corruption. They are starting to report it and come forward and give evidence. And we've got videos now. All kinds of different things are falling into our hands and being given to us because people trust us to do something about it, while our government has done nothing but either turn a blind eye or deliberately use it to mislead the American people.
I think that much of the discussion of your appearance yesterday, Sidney Powell, was centered around the charges that you made with regard to the computerized ballot system and the software. And I know, and I'm not going to insult your intelligence to suggest that here on the radio you're going to present some sort of evidence that that you would normally present in open court. My interest is actually more in terms of what type of evidence you could produce. Is the allegation here that there is a backdoor in the software system and people accessed that and just created vote tallies that did not exist? And if that's the case,
that's part of it. Yeah.
Okay, so how do you prove that?
Even admits, their own training manual admits that people can go in and do that people can go in and put all kinds of votes in a trash folder, essentially, and then trash them.
Oh, yes. I've read the articles remarkably in the New York Times and the Huffington Post, ironically, from several years before this election. Now they're silent on the issue. But I know that I recognize that the software is capable of being accessed that way. Again, my question is, how does one prove that that's what happened in this case?
Well, there are devices on the Internet that can be used to see it. And we have multiple people who actually saw it as it was happening. Okay. And so we essentially have some pictures of it.
Okay.
And it is terrifying, and it is a huge national security issue. Why the Department of Justice and the FBI have not done something on this immediately is beyond my comprehension. Dominion is closing its offices and moving. No doubt they're shredding documents and God only knows what else. More than 100 Dominion people have wiped any connection with Dominion off the internet. They're taking down prior articles about them. Carolyn Maloney, I think it was, wrote a letter to the Secretary of the Treasury or some government official back in 2013, I think it was, complaining about this and raising questions about it and suggesting and saying it was foreign owned and shouldn't be approved.
Yeah.
Well, all they did was create a shell company in the United States, but they're completely intertwined. They share office space with one of George Soros's groups. His number 2 man heads up the operation out of England, but the money for it was all funded from Venezuela and Cuba and communists, and they did it. We've got an eyewitness to all of it who's given a sworn affidavit that he saw it all done, and the purpose it was done for was to rig elections.
Now, and we're speaking with Sidney Powell. She is the lead attorney on the Trump campaign legal team, and you saw her at the press conference yesterday. We've been talking quite a bit. And by the way, Sidney Powell, you've been I consider you a friend, first of all, and as well as a fantastic guest on my programs for many years now. Leading up to this, I have the utmost respect for you, and I know how passionately you feel about these things. And because of that, you have incredible credibility with me and therefore with our audience as well. We do have questions with regard to the computer system and whether there is a paper backup. So in other words, if there is a access via the software where they can just manipulate and make votes appear, at some point there needs to be a ballot to back that up, just in case there is an audit process, right? Is that part of your argument as well?
That is, we have pictures of bags of paper ballots being trashed. We have evidence of shredders running to cover paper ballots. We have testimony of a witness who saw ballots from military people opened, and if they were for Trump, they were thrown out, and a substitute ballot was put in for Biden.
Wow. And these are all people who are swearing under oath with their names. I mean, because God knows they are going to be attacked mercilessly.
Exactly, and that's one reason why we haven't made these specific affidavits public, because some of them, just by what they say, you can identify who the person was. But, I'm essentially staking my personal and professional reputation on these allegations, and I have no hesitation from what I've seen in doing so. In fact, I think it would be irresponsible, if not criminal, of me not to come forward with it.
One part of yesterday's statement, Sidney Powell, really caught my eye when you and I'm paraphrasing, but you basically said this system was set up in a way where whoever was willing to pay the right amount, they'd get the election results that they're looking for, and that was a nonpartisan statement. So
exactly, the Republicans are as much at fault as this as the Democrats. There's no telling who we have thought we elected, that we didn't elect at all, that bought the machinations in more ways than one to put themselves in office. And I guarantee it crosses party lines, because for some reason the Republicans have opposed any sort of investigation of these systems for the last several years. Previously it was the Democrats complaining about it.
I'm hearing it.
Carolyn Maloney, Amy Klobuchar, Senator Warren were all over it, but now it's the first time. It's not the first time. Actually, I've got massive data from the 2016 election in California that we haven't even had the resources to get crunched yet. But the person who did it told me that was used. The machine was used then to deprive Bernie Sanders of the election in California, that he would have won or might have won the California primary, and Hillary Clinton used it to screw him out of that. And these people even told Bernie about it, and instead of doing anything about it, he sold out.
Wow. I don't know, by the way, I don't know if you've seen this news, but there was supposed to be a hearing in the state of Pennsylvania today with a representative from Dominion. They had volunteered to come in and answer questions from the state government committee overlooking these things. And at the last minute this morning, they backed out and decided that they didn't want to face the lawmakers in Pennsylvania. Have you heard about this?
Yes, I did hear about that, and I'm sure they're now all hiring lawyers and everything else, because they knew exactly what they were doing. They advertised these features of their machines. They briefed people on the features of their machines. They paid kickbacks and benefits to the families of public officials who bought or got them their government contracts. I mean, this is a national and international cesspool of corruption.
There's been some suggestion in the media. I don't blame you if you ignore the media, so I'll pass on some of the things that are being said. But there's some
Right, yes,
suggestion.
I pay no attention to anything anybody's saying about me.
There's some suggestion that's Dominion and the software company. It's not Select. I'm sorry. Help me out with the software.
Smartmatic.
Thank you. That they might sue you for the allegations you made yesterday, and I'm wondering what your response would be. I'm guessing you'd welcome that because that would bring on discovery of these things.
Oh, yeah, I'd love to have full discovery because right now we're limited to what we can do in the election contest, and that doesn't include discovery. But, yeah, I'd love to have civil discovery of everything about Dominion and Smartmatic and Lord Malik Brown, the Soros guy, and the Venezuelan people that put this together and sold it all over the world, and Mr. Eric Coomers, who's on video saying he had the election rigged with a Black Lives Matter or Antifa group, bragging about how he'd had it fixed for Biden. Nobody had to worry about it. Yeah, give me civil discovery. I'll take that any day.
I know you mentioned how hard your team is working, and people should know the vast majority of the lawyers that are working on this in the various states, and there's multiple efforts in multiple states, are volunteering their time. I know a couple of lawyers who have volunteered, and they went to the sound of the drums, and they've been up there with their pitches and their pitchforks and their torches. There is a timeline here, and there is a real major deadline coming up here constitutionally with regard to the Electoral College. Can you sort of lay out what you expect to happen over the course of the next 2 weeks?
Well, I think over the next 2 weeks, we will get a fraud complaint filed that makes people's jaws hit the floor. I really think we can get at least the initial outline of the whole plan put together and documented by then. Evidence is going to continue to come in. What I remain just absolutely appalled about is the failure of the government to seize the Dominion machines in every state, every place. And it's not just the Dominion machines, Larry. The same DNA code of the corrupt system is in other voting machines around the country, too, owned by other companies. Whether they know it or not, I don't know, but I can't imagine they don't.
There's been some concern here over the idea that this action that you're taking is going to demoralize voters, demoralize Republican voters, turn off Republican voters. It will affect the turnout for the Georgia runoffs that are coming, and that people
there shouldn't be a Georgia runoff with these machines. There should be an injunction issued or a court order issued to stop the Georgia runoff. They cannot rely on these machines. In no way, shape, or form.
The recount was just certified. The people of Georgia, the Secretary of State there claims, listen, we looked at it all, we audited it all, and the paper ballots matched what the computers said. How do you respond?
That's a lie. Well, it might have. I mean, you can rerun the same corrupted ballots through a machine and come out with the same thing.
Yeah.
That really doesn't prove anything. The machine can override review of signatures. It can override review of the top part of the ballot or one particular candidate. They can program it to do anything you can program a computer to do. And that's what they've done. Not to mention the Secretary of State of Georgia and the governor of Georgia rushed to give a $100 million contract to Dominion, I think in 2019, which is not that long ago, before elections started. And that was a $100 million system. We have one lawyer that has told me that they got essentially kickbacks and benefits for their families from doing that, not to mention what I would call election insurance, knowing that they would be elected or reelected in the process. And it's got to be criminally investigated.
Yeah.
Every bit of it in every state.
There's one thing that
we've got to have a ballot system that the American people can trust. We're supposed to be a republic.
I agree. But the most terrifying thing about this, and you mentioned how frightening this was. You used those words yesterday, and it's appropriate because if we don't believe our vote counts, if we think that all of our work and all of our action and going to rallies and raising money and getting our neighbors together and going out and vote, and then it just doesn't matter anyway, then we're lost. We are lost as a republic, Sidney Powell, and that's why I know you're so passionate, and I'm passionate about this as well.
Yes.
I'm curious about one thing, and again, I'm just trying to rationalize all of this in my head. If
Sure.
they're
I
if
mean,
they're
it's a
able,
lot to wrap your head around.
oh, I know, if they're able to access this software from the back door and manipulate the numbers, and then they produce the ballots later to sort of back up the software manipulation. If they can produce those ballots, why bother manipulating the software? You know what I mean? I mean, if they can just produce 100,000 ballots, can't they just do that and then scan them? They don't have to access the software. Do you know what I mean?
Well, yeah, but to keep the voting going in real time the way that they've been doing it, they have to do it electronically. And the reason they shut the machines down was, what was it, 5 states that all of a sudden stopped counting?
Right,
It's never
right.
happened in the history of elections.
I remember
There's one
covering
time
it
that-
live on the air, thinking, "Why is everything stopped? What's happening here in these states?" Yeah.
Exactly. Well, what stopped was Trump voters essentially broke the algorithm. They'd already figured out the algorithm they thought they needed to make sure Biden won. And so I think they ran that probably across the country. I don't know that for sure. That's an educated supposition at this point,
Okay.
because, they wanted to make sure he got the vote. But what happened was there were so many more Trump votes than the algorithm could compensate for that was already pre-programmed in there. They had to stop the machines for several hours to backfill the additional vote needed to push Biden over in those certain areas in the swing states.
I also want to say Sidney Powell was a frequent guest on this program during the beginning parts of the Robert Mueller investigation. She knew most of the people involved in that. Everything she said about that investigation and the people involved was proven correct. When she took on the case of General Michael Flynn, everything she predicted and everything she said in the early stages of that case eventually came out once the Justice Department was finally compelled to produce. In fact, they still haven't produced all of the evidence in that case, have they, Sidney Powell?
No, they haven't. They haven't.
But you have been proven right that entire time. And I just want to say, I've been in contact with Sidney from this weekend. On Monday, I tried to get Sidney on the show, and she said to me, "I'm not going to be doing much media at all this week. We'll talk on Friday. On Friday, I'll be able to." And here you are on Friday. And I say that because I think it's fair for you to respond to what Tucker Carlson said last night. When I watched his monologue, I thought, well, wait a minute. I was texting with Sidney Powell, too. And as soon as she said, "I'm not doing media until Friday," I laid off and I waited until Friday. How do you respond to what you heard last night? Because it carries a lot of weight when Tucker Carlson goes on Fox News and says what he said.
Well, he sent me some. I had been corresponding with him. I sent him one of the affidavits, one of the most important affidavits, in response to his request. And then I got some very nasty, rude, condescending, and arrogant and demeaning messages from him that I simply did not appreciate or have time to deal with. So I offered him another witness that I thought would be able to explain and answer his questions, and he still continued to insult me. And I just told him not to contact me any further. And right now, I assure you that when I have something else to say, it will not be on Tucker Carlson's show.
Sidney Powell, thank you for joining us today. I know that you've got a lot of work to do, a mountain of work to do. By the way, I hear this a lot. If there are people who want to help your effort, what can they do?
Yes, we've started a nonprofit 501c4, so it's not tax deductible, but it's essentially a legal defense fund for the Republic. I am not being paid by the campaign. I'm being paid by the people of the United States of America, and I want to make sure we get this right for the future of this country. It's called defendingtherepublic.org.
Thank you, Sidney. Get back to work.
Thank
I appreciate you joining us.